You are either the leader of your child's life or you're just the chauffeur with a bag of money. There is no third option. My mom used to say from 0 to 6 sets the child's personality. From 7 to 12, you got to teach them everything they'll need to survive without you. Now, after 12-ish, every voice except yours gets louder. And that raising you did gets tested by their friends, the culture, social media. But that's the whole parenting window. It's 12 years. It's not 18. Not the length of time you thought you had, huh? I mean, think about it and be realistic. After they go through puberty, they start pulling away. And the hugs and kisses that you once enjoyed, now, now embarrass them when their friends are around. They're going to listen to you even less after puberty, just like you did when you were that age. The building phase is over for the most part. The beliefs, identity, and standards you built in your child or didn't is going to show up now. You can try to repair what you missed, but repairing what you missed is way harder than the first 12 years of installation. It's a lot harder. That was the lens that I used on my own kids from day one. My mom handed me a clock and I just believed her. Now, most parents act like they have unlimited time. They defer. They'll have the conversation later. They'll deal with the behavior next week. They'll get serious when the child gets older and more mature. But later never comes with the same urgency as now. This video is about what to put in before the clock runs out and how to know if you did it. Most parents think they're leading their kids. They're not. They're just funding them. And their kids already know the difference. Every parent falls into one of two categories, whether you know it or not. You're either a leader or a chauffeur with that bag of money. The leader has a vision for that little unfinished human. They pay for things that develop the kid for when they're 50. Not just to keep the peace today. When things get hard, they hold the vision. They let the instructor or the coach push the kid. They see obstacles as the object of the exercise, not the problem. Now, the chauffeur funds whatever the kid wants with no direction behind it. They mistake presence for leadership. When things get hard, they default back to keeping the peace. They let the kid quit. They pull them away from the difficult teacher. They remove the hard thing before the kid ever has to face it. It's the same love, it's the same money, completely different standard under every decision. The chauffeur's standard is, I will keep the peace. The leader's standard is, I will build this child into what he or she is supposed to be. One of those standards is making your parenting decisions right now, whether you're aware of it or not. Now, I watch this play out constantly at my school. A parent would bring their kid in. I'd explain what the program builds, the goal setting system, the self-control, the confidence, the body awareness, the work and reward structure, the ability to take a hit and keep going. And without fail, at least one parent would look down at their 6-year-old and ask, do you want to do karate? Do you like it? Now that question is based on that day. What if the kid was tired? What if they got in trouble in the class? What if they're just not feeling it right now? What if they're thinking about the video game they're about to play? The kid has been on the planet for 6 years. They have no concept of what martial arts builds long term. They don't know any of it exists. So the parent is asking a 6-year-old to evaluate a 10-year investment based on how they feel in this moment. That's not respecting the child's opinion. That's abandoning your leadership role and calling it kindness. Every time keeping the peace beats chasing a vision, the kid learns that hard things are optional. That lesson compounds silently for 12 years, and you find out the cost after the window closes. So ask yourself one question honestly. Am I making this decision based on my vision for who this child needs to be? Or is it based on what keeps things quiet right now? Those are not the same question, and only one of them represents leadership. Letting your child decide what they believe is not freedom. It's abandonment dressed up as respect. Kids can't make certain decisions, not because they're bad or incapable, because they literally lack the equipment. They have no concept of the future, no framework for long-term consequences, no ability to evaluate what a stable life actually requires. They are operating entirely on what feels good right now, which means the parent has to make the belief decision until the foundation is set and the kid has something real to think from. Letting them decide before the foundation is built isn't parenting, it's just hoping. I would teach kids techniques, strategies, rules, everything they needed. Then I let them spar for the first time, and without fail, they'd kick low, kick to the back, drop their hands, and get punched in the face. Then cry, or they would just hate it. Here's what made that confusing. They knew the techniques. We had done partner drills. They could attack and defend. They had everything they needed, and none of it showed up when the pressure was applied. So I started asking them what they were thinking in certain moments. And what I found out was almost every kid had made an absolute identity statement after about 4 minutes of sparring. I am just not good at sparring. I don't like it. 4 minutes, 1 or 2 rounds, and they had already decided who they were and what they believed about sparring forever. So I argued at first. I told them, well, that's not true, but it didn't work. You can't argue someone out of an identity statement. So I went upstream. Their whole life, they had been told hitting is bad. That was the belief controlling everything. And it was hurting them in sparring, not because they were scared of being hit, because they were scared of hitting. So I flipped the belief. I told them, in karate, hitting people is how we show love. If I don't hit you, you have no reason to learn how to block. You have no reason to get better. Hitting is how we help each other grow. When the belief changed, the identity changed. When the identity changed, the standards held. When the standards held, the behavior changed. And when the behavior changed, I got way better outcomes. They got way better outcomes. The root was always the belief. Everything else was just fruit or a byproduct. The parent's job is to tend to the roots, not chase the fruit. You are the belief installer right now. That is your job title for the next 12 years. Not friend, not peacekeeper. You are belief master. Until the foundation is set, you decide what they believe about hard work, about family, about faith, about who they are. Not because you're controlling them, because they don't have the equipment yet to make those decisions. And the world is already installing beliefs whether you are or not. Also, your child has no idea what you're talking about. None. And it's not their fault, it's yours. Every word you use to correct your child, when you're talking to them about respect, responsibility, courtesy, standard, you've known those words for 20 years. You use them automatically. You assume everyone around you has the same definitions that you do. But your child has only been on the planet for like 8 years. When exactly were they supposed to have learned what those words mean? In what class? From what teacher? At what specific moment did someone sit them down and define it? They didn't. You just assumed they did. The assumption gap is the distance between what you think you communicated and what actually landed. You probably think they have a listening problem, don't you? It's the cause of more parenting frustration than almost anything else, and almost none of it has anything to do with the child's character. I overheard a parent in my parking lot telling their 10-year-old they needed to be more responsible. The parent was frustrated. Clearly not the first time they had had this conversation. The kid looked confused. The kid walked into class and I pulled him aside and asked, do you know what responsible means? And he said, no. That parent had been furious at a word the kid had never been taught. Not once. They weren't being irresponsible. They were lost. And every time the parent said the word and the kid didn't respond correctly, the parent got more frustrated and the kid got more confused. Both of them got stuck in this loop that a single definition could have broken. I saw this constantly. Respect, honesty, discipline, contribution. Adults using words they'd known for decades and expecting kids who'd been alive for 7 or 10 years to already have a solid grip on them. For example, you've known the word help for so long that you've forgotten whether it was ever explained to you or not. What is help? Why would anybody want to help? What does it produce if you do? What does it cost you if you don't? Those aren't obvious questions to a kid. They've never been answered, so the word is just a sound. So before you hold your child to any standard, define every word of it out loud. Then ask them to say it back in their own words. If they can't, the installation isn't done yet. That's just where the work needs to happen. Find the gap and fill it. That's the whole job. Let's talk about rules. Think about this. Rules are for affecting a specific behavior in a specific place. They're not a parenting system, so stop treating them like one. And I'll be direct. I hate rules. Not because order doesn't matter, because rules are situational. They're attached to a location and a specific problem. The moment the situation changes, the rule stops working, and now you need a new rule the kid doesn't even have yet. So the behavior repeats. The kid doesn't know or understand that the rule you made is for everywhere or all the time. Here's the other problem nobody talks about. You have to remember the rules in order to enforce them. Most parents can't even remember what they ate for breakfast. You're busy, you're adulting, you're surviving. So eventually the rules stop getting enforced consistently. And a rule that's not enforced consistently isn't a rule. It's a suggestion with consequences attached on random days. A rule stays home. A standard travels with the kid because it comes from an identity. It goes with them to school, to their friend's house, to social media, to everywhere you aren't standing next to them. Rules fix a moment. Standards operate an identity. Those are not the same things. At my school, I had 4 rules. Stay on your spot, no touching without permission, no hitting without permission, and follow instructions. Just 4, because I could remember 4, because the kids could remember 4, because 4 rules with clear reasons behind them are enforceable. 40 rules are just noise that nobody, including the parent, can track. Everything else wasn't covered by rules. It was covered by standards. The rules kept the room physically safe, but the standards told the kids who they were and how that person behaves, whether I was there or not. A kid who knows the rule, don't run in the house, will walk as long as you're there watching. You are the thing that makes the rule stick. But a kid whose standard says, I am someone who's aware of the people around me and I will be safe, moves through spaces carefully. That kid doesn't need a rule. The standard travels. The rule doesn't. So cut your rules down to what you can actually remember and enforce consistently. If you can't say them all right now without thinking, you have too many. Everything else needs to become a standard, not a rule. A way of being that belongs to the kid because it's attached to who they are, not where they are. What are you actually trying to build? Belief, identity, standards, in that order, every time. Skip a level and nothing above it will hold, ever. This is the framework. And so far I've talked about the first 3 levels, each one built on the one before it. Belief is what your child is taught is true. It's spoken in I believe statements. I believe hard work produces results. I believe this family takes care of each other. I believe God is the highest authority. Belief is the foundation. Everything else sits on top of it. Identity is who your child decides they are based on what they believe. It's spoken in I am statements. I am a person that finishes what they start. I am someone who helps without being asked. I am a fighter. Identity has characteristics, things you can actually observe, and values underneath those characteristics that explain why. Standards are the operating procedures of the identity, how that person acts, talks, treats people, responds to pressure, whether somebody's watching or not. Standards are I will and I won't statements. Decided in advance, no escape clause built in. Standards without belief and identity under them are just rules with better branding. They won't stick. You will wonder why. You think your kids don't listen, but the answer is always the same. Something is missing in the foundation. Now understand this, installing this framework isn't a conversation. It's not a Saturday morning sit down or lecture. Let me explain it like this. In business, it takes 8 to 20 touches before someone buys into what you're selling. 8 to 20 separate interactions before money changes hands. Think about that. At my martial arts school, a kid comes twice a week. Each class is 45 minutes. By the time we warm up, drill, work on belt material, and gear up for sparring, they're actually exchanging live contact for about 8 minutes per class. 16 minutes per week, roughly an hour a month of real sparring. And we wonder why it takes so long to earn a black belt. Now think about your kid. How many minutes per week are you actually talking about what your family believes is right or good? Defining who they are inside the family. Teaching them that the standards that tell them how a person in this house acts whether you're there or not. Put a number on it, because that number is the answer to why it hasn't taken hold yet. This isn't installed in one conversation. It's installed through deliberate repetition across hundreds of ordinary moments. Dinner, car rides, chores, arguments, celebrations. Every moment is an installation opportunity. The parents who understand that are the ones whose kids still carry the foundation when they're 30. So, you don't need more conversations about values. You need to attach values to the moments that are already happening. Every chore, every meal, every car ride, every hard moment. The installation happens in the ordinary moments, not these special circumstances. So start looking for ordinary moments, start looking at ordinary moments differently, and you'll find you have more installation opportunities in a single day than you thought you had in a whole week. Not every belief is worth installing in a child. Most parents never ask which ones are. I had to because I was 19 years old with a kid and no roadmap and no expert who could tell me what this specific child in front of me actually needed. So I did what I always do. I asked questions until I built one. The first question I asked myself was, what was the most important one? It wasn't, what do I want my child to do or how do I get them to behave? It was, what does this child actually need to survive and thrive in a world that I won't always be in? The question led me to beliefs, specific ones, not general values I hope would somehow transfer, actual statements I could install deliberately. Tested again against 4 criteria, every one. Here are the 4 criteria, and I've never seen them written down anywhere else, not because they're complicated, because most parents never slow down long enough to ask what makes a belief worth installing in the first place. So 1, it must provide protection. The belief has to shield the child from outside influence, from culture, from peer pressure, from the voices that'll try to define them before you finish the job. If a belief can't protect them from something real, it's useless. 2, it must be an anchor, something they can grab when they don't know what to do next and you're not there. A decision must be made now, but you won't be there to ask. The belief has to be there. 3, it must do no harm, short term and long term. An example would be, I believe in a woman's right to choose as it relates to abortion, or it's okay to steal things from a business because insurance will cover it. You got to test every belief you're considering against the person you actually want this child to be. Number 4, it must transfer easily to a strong identity. The belief is the seed, the identity is the tree. If a child can eventually build an I am statement from what they believe, it's not a foundational belief. It's just information. And information without identity attached to it doesn't change behavior. Every belief I installed had to pass all 4. If it failed 1, I didn't use it. I was 19 when my oldest son was born. I had an idea of what I wanted for him. I wanted him smart, not just be able to read, but understand what he read. I wanted him to love God and care more about what God thought than what people thought. I wanted him confident enough to use his intelligence and stand up for himself. Those were the targets. Now I needed beliefs that could carry him to each one, beliefs that protect him, that anchored him, that did no harm, that could eventually become his identity. I ran every candidate through all 4 criteria before I committed to a single one. The ones that passed made the list. The ones that didn't, no matter how good they sounded, they didn't get in. That filter saved my kids from a lot of well-intentioned beliefs that would have done more damage than good. And it gave me a standard for installation that wasn't based on what I felt in the moment, but on what would actually hold up 20 years later. So before you install anything in your child, run it through the 4 criteria. Write them down if you have to. Does it protect? Does it anchor? Does it do no harm? Does it transfer to identity? If it passes all 4, it's worth installing. If it fails even 1, find a better version or find a different belief entirely. You have a limited window and unlimited things competing for space in your child's head. Be selective about what you put in there. This is an example of how I actually installed them. Once I knew which beliefs were worth installing, I needed a way to get them in without it feeling like a lecture, because I too hate lectures. So I built what I call marketing phrases, and they changed everything. A marketing phrase is a short, memorable statement aimed at a specific target, designed to carry a belief into a child without sounding like instruction. The best ones have a question living inside them. One the kid feels without being asked, and they're short enough to say in passing, in the car, at dinner, during a chore. No sit down required, no formal lesson. Just a phrase repeated across enough ordinary moments that it becomes part of how the kid thinks. The phrase is the vehicle, the belief is what's writing inside. For being smart, the phrase was, smart people rule the world. That's an implied choice every time I hear it. I mean, what do you want to be, the ruler or the ruled? I never had to explain it. The question lived inside the statement and the kid felt it every time. For faith and to get them focused on the vertical perspective, the phrase was, I don't work for you, I work for God. That kept them focused upward instead of horizontal to the people around them. Stop performing for the room. Stop trying to please people. God is the audience. Nobody else's opinion matter. For confidence, the phrase was, confidence is established in a history of success over times, and we're going to fake it till we make it. That put the emphasis on trying. It implied a standard of measure, and it removed the idea that confidence is something you either have or don't. It's something you build by doing things repeatedly until the history speaks for itself. For fear, the phrase was, fear is the most powerful demon, and his job is to make sure you do not do what God created you to do. That made fear the enemy of purpose, not just an uncomfortable feeling, an active opponent working against everything God built them for. My kids didn't just want to overcome fear after that, they were offended by it. Now here's how I did it. I didn't deliver these phrases the same way to all three kids because all three kids were completely different people. My oldest understood things early. He was well read at an early age. He was sharp and he was an extreme rule follower, which sounds like a blessing until you understand what that actually means. For instance, we went skiing one time with my martial arts instructor, and he skied down the mountain about 100 yards and called my oldest son and said, "Ski down to me." My son skied directly into him, full speed, no hesitation. We laughed. Then my instructor pointed to a lift support pole and told him, "Ski to that lift support." My son skied directly into the pole. My instructor looked at me and he goes, "That boy follows directions exactly." That moment told me everything I needed to know about how to install beliefs in my oldest. Too many rules and I wouldn't get a person. I'd get a compliance machine that skis into poles. So I gave him standards instead of closed rules, directions instead of destination, open-ended beliefs that force him to think rather than just execute. Now my second kid was different in every possible way. He challenged everything with a smile, which made it impossible to stay frustrated at him. I'd tell him to stop aggravating his sister, and he'd look at me and go, "Daddy, what does stop mean?" And I'd answer, and then he'd go, "Daddy, what does aggravating mean?" And I'd answer. Then he'd work through every single word in the sentence until I defined all of them, and then continue doing exactly what he'd been doing. I'd sit him on his bed and talk to him. He'd be bouncing. I'd tell him, "Be still and listen." He'd bounce less high. I'd correct him again. He'd find the smallest technically compliant bounce he could physically produce and maintain it with complete sincerity. He wasn't being defiant. He was studying the exact boundary of every standard I set to find out where the boundary actually was. Now he works at a marketing company now, studies language for a living, finds the edges of things. Of course he does. For him, the beliefs couldn't be rules. Rules were just puzzles to solve. The beliefs had to be principles he could reason from because he was going to reason from them whether I built them or not. So I built in deliberately and aimed it. My third was a combination of both with safety as her primary focus. Same beliefs, different timing, different wording, different entry point for each concept based on what she was ready to receive and what her personality could actually use. But it was the same destination, three completely different rows. And here's what that means for you. The beliefs are not negotiable. The criteria are not negotiable. The identity is not negotiable. The delivery, the timing, the wording, the marketing phrase that carries the belief into that specific kid, that has to be adapted to who's actually standing in front of you. What works for one won't work for another, and that's normal. It would be easier if it did work for everybody, but then you wouldn't have to learn to be a great parent that looks at every kid as unique, would you? Paying attention to who your kid is, they're already showing you. The rule follower who skis in the poles is telling you something. The kid parsing every word in your sentence is telling you something. The one who needs safety before anything else is telling you something. So listen, then install the beliefs, identity, and standards accordingly. And here's the thing I didn't expect when I started all of this. I told my kid from the beginning, I don't know how to be a dad, and you don't know how to be a son, so we're going to learn this together. You teach me how to teach you. I meant it as a philosophy. It turned out that it was the most accurate thing that I'd ever said. I am the dad that I am today because my kids are great teachers. And that might be the most important belief I ever installed. Not in them, in me. Now, with all that being said, build one marketing phrase for one belief you want installed. Make it short enough to say in a car. Make it memorable enough that your kid will hear it in their head when you're not around. Make sure a question lives somewhere inside it, one they feel without being asked. then deliver it across ordinary moments until it stops feeling or stops being something they heard and starts being something they are. And while you're doing that, watch how they receive it, because the way they receive it is them showing you who they are. And who they are tells you everything about how to deliver the next one. Your child is already building an identity. The only question is whether you're helping build it or whether culture is doing it without you. Once the belief is installed, you link an identity to it. The identity has two ingredients: characteristics, the observable things. What does this person actually do? What can you see? How do they treat people? How do they show up when it costs something? Or how do they show up when it costs something? Number two is values, the reasons why, or the hierarchy of importance. Underneath every characteristic is a value that explains it. The kid who helps without being asked isn't just being nice. There's a belief underneath it about what people are worth and what this family does. Find the value in the characteristic makes perfect sense. Once a child can see the characteristics and understand the values, they can say, I am, with something real behind it. Not a label, an actual identity with texture and reason that holds under pressure. Now, my personal identity stack and the one I built into my kids runs 3 layers deep. First, an identity in Christ. Study how he lived. He fed people. He healed people. He spent time with the forgotten. He served without regard for personal consequence. Those are the characteristics. And the values underneath is love God above everything, love people the way you love yourself. Once you understand both, the standards kind of write themselves. I won't lie. I won't abandon people who need help. I will sacrifice time and money for people. I will say no to anything that violates who I am. Second was the family identity. I am a Wilkinson. That name means something in this house. It means we work hard, we help people, we don't quit, we take care of each other above all others. The kids didn't opt out of that identity, but they also didn't just hear me announce it. They watched me live it. That's the difference between installing an identity and just labeling one. Third, a personal identity the kid discovers inside the other two. Mine is a fighter. Not because I told myself to be one, because pressure revealed it over time. That one gets earned, not assigned. 3 layers, each one built on the one before it. And all of it visible in how they actually live, not just in what they say about themselves. So help your child name who they are with real characteristics behind it. Not, you're a good person. What does that person do? What do they value and why? Make it specific enough that the kid can picture it, and specific enough that they know the difference between living it and performing it, because they'll know the difference even if you don't. Now, if you did the belief and identity work correctly, the standards almost write themselves. If they don't, something's missing. You got to go back. Go back to beliefs and identity. A standard is a pre-decided line. 2 words, I will or I won't. Decided before the pressure arrives, before the temptation shows up, before the room starts expecting something from your kid. If they have an escape clause or an unless attached to it, then those aren't standards. Those are just wishes. And the wording matters more than most parents realize. A standard that tells the kid what they can't do is a ceiling. A standard that tells the kid what they get to do is an expansion. You want to write expansions, not ceilings. You want standards that open doors. I was at a competition operating under the standard, I will obey the rules. See, that's honorable, that's solid. And that standard cost me. My opponent had a different standard. I will use the rules. Same written rules for both of us, 1 word different between the standards. The rule said no kicking below the belt, but you get 3 warnings before your opponent gets a penalty point. My opponent's standard meant I get to kick him below the belt twice before it costs me anything. And he never broke a single rule. So I got kicked in the balls twice, legally. 1 word difference, obey versus use. Completely different standards, completely different outcomes. The wording of your child's standard either limits them or expands them. A standard that says, I won't disrespect people is a ceiling. A standard that says, I will treat people like they matter is a direction. It's the same concept, completely different meaning. Show your kid how to write expanding standards, not ceilings. The standards should tell them what they're headed toward, not just what they're staying away from. So here's what you can do. Sit down with your child and write 1 standard together. Use I will, not I won't. Make it a direction, not a restriction. Then ask them, what does a person who lives by that standard actually do? What does it look like on a regular Tuesday? If they can answer that, the standard is real. And if they can't, keep working until they can. Your home is a classroom. It's safe, it's controlled, it's managed. It'll never show you the truth about whether any of this actually took hold. Only pressure will. The standard isn't proven when you set it, it's proven when it costs something to keep it. The real test is always the environment you don't control. School, a friend's house, the party. The moment nobody is watching and the easy choice is right there. What your kid does there isn't failure, it's data. The most accurate data you'll ever get as a parent. It tells you exactly where the foundation is solid and where it isn't. Your job is to read it without flinching and use it without punishing your kid first. The first person you look at for blame is you. Did you do everything in your power, knowledge, and opportunity to explain, demonstrate, and make sure they understood the beliefs, the identity, and the standards? And be honest about that. If the answer is yes, then totally blame the kid. If the answer is no, find out where you broke the link. I guarantee it was a belief, an identity, or a standard. One of those was weak. At my school, I did everything I could to manufacture pressure in the classroom. We did harder drills, unexpected tests, stress scenarios. I thought I was getting the truth about my students, but I wasn't. Over time, the kids adapted. They came to expect the pressure, even if it was unconscious. They knew it was safe. I was still in the room. It was still controlled, and a student who can feel all that will always perform differently than one who can't. The only way to see the actual truth was a tournament. There's no safety net, strangers are watching, an opponent they'd never seen before, a time limit, real consequences, multiple layers of pressure I couldn't build in a classroom no matter how hard I tried. I'd send a kid knowing they had 10 techniques and they would use 2. And instead of calling that failure, I called it intelligence gathering. Now I know exactly what held under pressure and what didn't. Now I know what to actually work on. Then we'd go back, fix the real problem, return to the tournament or outside environment, confirm it held, and that's the loop. That's the whole loop. Here's what that means for you as a parent. The kid who comes home from a hard situation where they made the wrong call, that's not a crisis, that's your tournament data. That's the most useful information you'll get all year. Don't waste it on punishment. Use it to find where the foundation needs work. Then go fix the actual problem. Not necessarily the behavior, the root of the problem. And stop protecting your kid from pressure. You got to use it. When something hard happens, don't ask what happened. Ask what they did. What was their response and why? The answer to why will show you exactly which belief, identity, or standard is missing or weak. That's your next installation target. Pressure isn't the enemy of the foundation. Pressure is how you find out if the foundation is real. You'll know the work is done when the safe disappears and you're nowhere in sight. And the standard holds anyway, not because they remembered a rule, because it's just who they are. This is the destination. A child who has genuinely internalized belief, identity, and standards doesn't need you in the room because they've taken ownership of who they are. The standard belongs to them now. There's a difference between a kid who performs a standard and a kid who lives one. Performed standards collapse the moment the authority figure leaves. Owned standards don't. That's the whole game. That's what 12 years of installation is building toward. Now, my son was about 20 years old. He was my business partner at the time. He's still my business partner, but it was Christmas. He was standing in a line at Walmart, just a regular checkout line. In front of him was a woman with a cart full of groceries and gifts. When it came time to pay, her card was declined and she started crying, pleading with the cashier. It was about $400 worth of stuff. My son stepped in, he paid for all of it. No audience, no one watching who knew him, no parent standing next to him telling him what to do, no rule that said pay for strangers at Christmas. Just a 20-year-old kid in a checkout line who saw a woman crying and knew exactly what a person with his beliefs, identity, and his standards does in that moment. He did not think about me. He didn't ask what I would do. He didn't weigh the cost against his budget. He just lived out his beliefs, identity, and standards. Now, I didn't find out till later. He didn't come home bragging about it or anything. He didn't tell me so he could get credit. He mentioned it in the way you mention something ordinary, because to him, it was. Of course you help. Of course you step in. Of course a gift has zero expectation attached to it. That's just who we are. That moment wasn't about Walmart. It wasn't about $400, and it wasn't even about the woman. It was about the belief, the identity, and the standards showing up in a checkout line at Christmas when nobody was watching. That's what it looks like when it works. Now, you won't always see the moment that it proves itself. Sometimes you'll hear about it later. Sometimes you'll never hear about it at all. That's fine. That's actually the point. You're not building a kid who performs for you. You're building a person who lives it when you're not there. Keep tending the roots. Trust the process. The fruit will come, and when it does, it'll show up in the most ordinary places at the most unexpected moments, and it will be the best thing you've ever seen. Now, none of this works if you don't model it. Your kids watches what you do before they hear what you say, without exception. You can have the best framework in the world, the beliefs installed with precision, the identity built with care, the standards written without escape clauses. And if your behavior says something different than your words, they'll always follow the behavior. Now, here's something I learned from the kids that I work with at my martial arts school. The most important people on the planet to the child, the most favorite people in their entire world, is mom and dad. Now, most parents don't know or believe that. They think their kid wants to be with their friends, so they push them toward that. Then they get busy, they get overwhelmed, they start creating distance in small ways. It's not intentionally or consciously, but it's consistent. And the kid feels every inch of that. Your kid doesn't want their friends as much as they want you. So show up like you know that, because here is the truth underneath all the framework. None of this installs properly in a child who doesn't feel like they're your favorite thing in the world. A kid who feels pushed away doesn't receive the installation. They perform compliance and wait for it to be over. And you'll wonder why nothing is sticking. So here's the question every parent leaves with. What is your standard as a parent? Not, I will raise good kids. That's a wish. That's a need to, dressed up as a commitment. I need to raise good kids. What is the specific I will or I won't that drives your specific behavior every single day? Whether the kid's watching or not, whether it costs you something or not, whether it's convenient or not. That's the question. Because your child is not watching your plan, they're watching your standard. And the one you actually live, not the one you announced, is the one that shows up in them 20 years from now when you're not around. You have the first three parts of the framework now. You know what the window of 12 years is, and somewhere in a checkout line or a school hallway or a moment you'll never even hear about, you'll find out if you used it. So don't waste it. Subscribe and share it with your friends. I am Scott Wilkinson, and this is Foundations of Character.